How are you? It's good to meet you.
Yeah, me too. So I have approximately 15 questions to ask you. Please, hello, Pierce. Please, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. My name is Pierce Berolzheimer, and I am a first-time filmmaker. I got started working as sort of at the lowest rung in the totem pole on a couple features and got promoted to producer just by doing random assortment of jobs and learning on the fly. And then the filmmakers that I was working with wanted to see if I had a project that I wanted to get off the ground. And so then we went off and we made crabs.
I have discovered last year during the Fright Face Festival the Amazon Crabs movie that you have directed, edited, and produced. It is a nice tribute to the cult film of the 80s as Gremlins creators, Godzilla, Power Rangers series also, and horror movies. Please, can you talk a little bit about the origin of this movie?
Yeah, I really wanted to make a movie that like 14-year-old me would really enjoy. So I took a lot of the different elements that I loved and squished them all together. So I knew I wanted to make a horror comedy. And when I was growing up, we would travel down to Georgia, and there were always these horseshoe crabs on the beach, but I had never seen a horseshoe crab movie before. And so when the time came, I kept on expecting, as I grew up, I thought somebody would make the movie, but nobody did. So when the time came to make my own film, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to make the horseshoe crab movie.
In a few words, please can you talk a little about the main plot of this film?
Say that one more time.
In a few words, can you talk a little about the main plot, the synopsis of this film?
Oh yeah. So the movie is about these radiated or irradiated horseshoe crabs that attack a small town in Northern California, and this band of kids and law enforcement that have to try to save prom. And then it gets a little bit more out there later, but that's the basics.
What can you tell us about the main cast of this movie? Ali Jennings, Jessica Morris, and Chase Paget.
Oh, they're great. The cast was fantastic. Everyone got along. Everyone did a fantastic job. I'm really honored to have worked with such a good cast. They really all knocked it out of the park, and each of them was a pleasure to work with. And each of them brought, they come from a lot of different backgrounds, so they brought really unique elements to the dynamic of each of the characters. And near the end of the process, I really wasn't giving very many notes. They really embodied what I was looking for. If there's any one part of the film I'm the most proud of, it's the casting.
I really like the action scenes and the rate of your movie. How have you found such great inspiration? Movies, books?
Both. One of the biggest inspirations of the movie was Jurassic Park. And so there's a lot of sort of homages and playing with similar action scenes from Jurassic Park in the film. And so what I really, this movie was sort of my love letter to movies that I love. And so like the bar scene in Gremlins, I ripped that wholesale and put it here, but tried to do my own little twist on it. And so a lot of the action scenes are actually supposed to sort of resemble other movies that you've seen in the past that you might not have seen in a while. And so I really wanted to, while you're watching my film Crabs, I wanted you to be drawn back to a time when you remember all these other movies like Jurassic Park from the 80s and the 90s. And so a lot of the action scenes are based directly off of other action scenes, and then I just try to throw my own twist on them.
What can you tell us about your filming locations?
We filmed in Mendocino and Fort Bragg, California, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's about 4 hours north of San Francisco. And we ran into all sorts of problems. Like the first week of filming, there was a power outage. And so in order to do any emails or anything, we had to drive about 2 hours south to send out emails. And sorry, this isn't during filming. This is during pre-production. But we were still trying to coordinate actors flying in and getting catering and getting the props up there, but we couldn't get email because there was no internet, because there's no power. So even in order to understand how to get everybody to location. We had to drive 2 hours south in order to get internet, and it was an absolute nightmare. But the locations and the towns were perfect locations for the film, and I wrote it specifically for those towns. My grandmother lived up there, and so I knew that the location was going to be a character in and of itself. And so I wrote the film specifically for those two towns.
Which are for you the good ingredients to create a good horror movie as this one? The screenplay, the play, the actor?
Do you mind repeating that one more time?
Yeah, sorry. Which are for you the good ingredients to create a good horror movie as this one? The screenplay, the actors, the synopsis?
Oh, all of it really. I mean, I think that the premise can hold a lot of weight if you have something that sort of grabs your attention. If you have a like a catchy premise, I think that definitely pulls people in immediately, but that won't actually hold any weight after you've gotten people's attention. So to me, it's the characters. I mean, if you don't care about the characters, then you don't care about the story, no matter how cool the special effects are, no matter how cool the premise is or how interesting the script is. Like, if you can't relate to the people and you're not drawn in by their dynamics, then I think the movie will just fall apart no matter how much else you get right. And you can have a movie with terrible cinematography and awful special effects, but if you care about the characters, an audience will forgive that stuff pretty easily in a way that they wouldn't forgive great special effects and great cinematography, but with poor characters. So for me, getting the characters right was like the number one most important thing in the whole production.
What was the most difficult scene for you to shoot in this film, and why?
The most difficult shoot was there's two. The bar scene was really hard, and part of it was because we were filming between about 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. And a lot of the things we thought were going to work didn't work. And so we spent a lot of time. We got about half of what we wanted to shoot done, and we didn't have a budget to finish the rest of the shoot. So that the bar sequence in the film was supposed to be about twice as long, with a lot more things happening, and there was going to be dialogue, and there was going to be a lot more substance to that scene. But because of the way that we scheduled it and the way that some of the things didn't work out the way we wanted to, that we then had to change other things in order to make what we got work. So that was difficult. And then the other really challenging part was when we have this montage at the end of the movie where they're building the mechanical shark, and it wasn't challenging in a taxing sort of way. It was just challenging in a I really hope this works kind of way, because when they're building the giant, no spoilers, but when they're building the giant thing for the end of the film, originally that was going to be done a completely different way. And we got to the day without almost any preparation and no props. And so we were just picking things out of the piles of what was in the shop that we were in. It was all found on location. All of those props that they are using in that scene are completely found on location, including the pirate ship wheel and all of that. And then we built the cockpit using things we found on location. And so it was sort of a fingers crossed, I really hope this works. And we were sort of betting on it working. And so if it hadn't have worked, it would have been really challenging. So there was a lot of feeling like we were rolling the dice there. And especially when we like acknowledge the camera directly and the actors speak directly into the camera, I believed in it, and some of the crew believed in it, and some of the crew didn't believe in it. And so there was this sort of divide on, okay, has this completely gone off the rails, or are we still aiming at what we're aiming for initially here? And I think it worked out great. I mean, I'm really happy with I think it plays into the right crescendo at the end of the movie in the way that I wanted it to play. But it was definitely a gamble. And so that was a challenging day too. And that was also a night shoot. So any cold night shoots are, my next film I'm gonna write mostly during the day and mostly in warm climates.
Can you tell us how it's difficult to create actually a first movie as this one?
It's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. It's taken us 6 years. No, we're on year 7 now. We filmed it in 2015. Well, we filmed the first 80% in 2015, the last 20% in 2016 and 2017. Then we spent about 2.5, 3 years on visual effects, about a year plus on sound design. And at a certain point, I was sort of the person that was pushing the whole project forward. So like our producing team didn't really know how to do some of the special effects, and our budget was really limited. So I had to be really creative. I moved to Vietnam for almost a year to do some of the special effects. So I was living abroad, and it was without a doubt the most difficult thing I've ever done. And I had no idea how to do most of the film. Like I was learning on the fly almost every day. Something was new. I didn't know how to do special effects. I didn't know how to create creature sounds. Like a lot of the creature sounds in the film were a combination of one of our actors recording his lines, but then I took animal noises from the BBC library and combined it with his vocalizations, but I didn't know anything about how to edit sound design or anything like that. So it was just this constant learning process. I'm learning about distribution right now and marketing and sales. And so it's been the most challenging, but also most rewarding thing I've ever done. And it's I've learned more doing this than I've ever learned, in school or doing anything else.
So my next question is on the special effects. Have you worked with some companies, or have you do nearly all the special effects by yourself?
No, we worked with companies. We worked with originally for the final scene, the final fight, we were going to build a miniature set and do it as authentically old kaiju film style as possible, but our budget didn't allow for that. So I had no idea how to do it, but I thought that I could make it work if we did this drone footage and then did it on a green screen and superimposed the drone footage with a wide lens on the drone footage in order to match the creatures. But we had 380 visual effects shots. And so the only way to do that was to export the work to Vietnam, where we could get that many shots for our budget. But then we had to do more work in the United States sort of to clean up the work that was done there. And so when I was in Vietnam, we were cutting out each of the characters and rotoing them and putting them on the background. And then we had to add dust effects and laser effects and all sorts of work that I've learned how to oversee the visual effects process, but the actual artistry, I mean, it would be like learning how to paint. I mean, the VFX artists are artists in the same way that a painter is an artist, and there's no way I could take that on.
The film Crash was presented at the Gerardmer Film Festival. How does it feel to have your film shown in France?
Great. I think we've already sold the film in France too, so I'm really excited that it's going to be released in France. I've been to France 3 or 4 times. I was really disappointed I wasn't able to be there at the festival. I wish I could have been there, but it's been an honor. I mean, we've shown the film in Germany and France and the UK, and we're going to be showing it in Switzerland soon and Australia. And the response outside of the United States has been unbelievable in a way that, I was worried that some of the humor might not translate to different languages, but that doesn't seem to be a problem at all. And so it's really validating that, horror fans and comedy fans outside of the United States see the movie and get it in the same way that I intended it, which has been, it's been wonderful that it's been cross-cultural. I mean, I'm thrilled that it is being received internationally as well as it is. That's that is such a surprise and such an honor that the international community has enjoyed it. And yeah, I can't wait for it to come out in France. It's gonna be great.
What did you learn and retain from this movie?
Oh, I have learned how to take a really limited budget and not be constrained by your budget with your imagination. So I had this grand, crazy idea that should have cost a lot more than it did. And I learned that there's ways to do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. There are shortcuts and ways to get what you want as in a film, as long as you're willing to compromise. Like, as long as you're willing to say, okay, it's not exactly that, but it's this instead, you can basically do, you can tell whatever story you want, regardless of what budget you have. Like, you're not going to be, it might take a long time. It might be really difficult. But your budget shouldn't constrain your imagination is one of the biggest things that I learned. And one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was that you can basically, any choice, because being a director is all about just constantly making decisions. And hopefully all of your decisions are aligned towards one singular vision, but it's just constantly making little tiny minute decisions all day, every day. And one of the producers, one of his there's two great pieces of advice that I love, but one of them is you can either have things done well, fast, or cheap, but you can't have all three. You have to choose two. So you can have two of any of those at any time, but you can't have all three. And that feels like the most accurate advice for filmmaking that I've ever heard. And the other thing is, like, as a producer, because I was the writer, director, producer, editor on this, the best thing you could possibly do, so the role of the producer is to do everything and then systematically fire yourself from every job and hire people that are better at you than each thing, so that they can all do it better than you can. But in the meantime, you have to know how to wear every hat. And so I've learned a little bit about every piece of the process. And I hope to take that forward into my next project, because I all of the pitfalls that made this project take 7 years, I think will be pretty easily avoided now that I understand how a film is supposed to be made, instead of struggling my way through the whole thing.
Nice. Do you have some actors that you dream to work with, and why?
I do. I have a list. I wrote them down because that was a great question. And I didn't have, I knew a couple, but I really had to think about that some more. And I have a very, this is my list. Idris Elba, Sigourney Weaver, Clive Owen, Ethan Hawke, Michael Caine, Taissa Farmiga, Jimon Hansu, John Goodman, Dylan O'Brien, Daniel Radcliffe, Adrian Brody, and Julianne Moore. And to me, I love, each of them are actors or actresses that whenever I see them, I don't think about them as a person. I think about them in the role that they're in. So some of them may not be the most, they're all obviously incredibly famous, but they, I've never really had a desire to work with, like, Tom Cruise, because he's an amazing actor and there's no hard feelings with Tom Cruise. But when I see a Tom Cruise film, I see Tom Cruise. And so these are actors to me that are so good at embodying whatever role that they're in, that me as an audience member completely forget that they aren't that character. Like, Ethan Hawke was in this movie that I thought was the best movie of the year a couple of years ago, called First Reformed, that is just spectacular. And Idris Elba as Luther is one of the most interesting characters I've ever seen. And I have the next project I'm working on, I'm writing specifically for Idris Elba. Like, I would love for him to take it on. I think Sigourney Weaver, like, she breaks so many different molds of what it means to be a powerful woman actor, like a female lead, that she can basically do anything. And like, Daniel Radcliffe is a really good example, where he started as Harry Potter, and that was who he was. He was Harry Potter, and his career trajectory has just boomed after that. And he never takes on a role that is like a previous role. He's always doing something completely unique. Like Swiss Army Man is one of the greatest indie films I've seen in the last 10 years. Like that movie is awesome. And he is just fantastic in it. And so each of those actors, I feel like don't like Thaisa Farmiga she in Final Girls made me cry, and that's a horror comedy that had me tearing up. And so like her just honesty in whatever character she plays is mind-blowing. And so each of those actors for me are people that I really get lost in their performance. And the idea of getting to work with somebody like that really makes me then as a director get to tweak that and craft that would just be spectacular. And the other actors I want to add to the list are all the people that worked on Crabs. I would work with all of them again in a heartbeat on anything. They were all amazing.
It was a good cast. What advice you would give to a young film enthusiast who would like to make a movie as this one?
I would say do as much as you can to understand the process of filmmaking before you go off and do it. So while also not spending any money. So take your iPhone, film scenes, learn the basics of how to craft a scene, edit it, like just learn the basics, direct some actors. And then the next piece of advice I would say is go make the movie you want to make, while also always compromising, because the movie you have in your head is never going to be the movie that comes out on screen. And if you get stuck with the movie that you have in your head, you're going to be frustrated and disappointed and hard to work with. And I would not recommend doing that. I would recommend seeing a movie as three different things. There's the script. There are four different things, actually. There's the script. There's the movie you think you're making while you're shooting it. There's the movie you have in your head that you're trying to make. And then there's the movie that actually exists at the end of the day. And if you think of those as all different, like, angles on the same thing, then you can let one of them go and then focus on something else. The other thing I would recommend is to be patient, because it is like the number of movies that are set out to be made that actually don't get made is amazing. And if I didn't love, actually the piece of advice isn't necessarily be patient. It's don't make a movie that you don't want to make. If it's not the movie that you are super, super passionate about, it's the wrong movie to make. Like, we almost went into production on a movie that I thought was like the right movie to make as a first-time filmmaker. I thought it was the movie that would then get my career started, because it was popular with, it was a possession movie. And there was a bunch of other possession movies at the time. And it felt like, oh, that's a really popular genre. And it seems low budget and easy to make. Like, I could, if I do that first, then maybe later I'd be able to make the movie I really want to make. And I was, at the end of the day, I was like, no, if this is going to take me 2, 3, 7 years, I'm really glad I committed to making the movie I really wanted to make. Because who knows, maybe this will be the only movie I ever make. I hope not. But if it is, because I know a lot of people make one movie and then don't keep making movies, you want to put out the thing that makes you want to be a filmmaker, right? Like, that really excites you. And if it's not that, don't do it. If you're doing it any other reason besides you love the movie and you love the concept, then you're making the wrong movie.
And my last question, which are your current projects?
I've got a couple. The first one is the Idris Elba movie that I would, it's called Tithe. And it is it's a revenge movie set sort of in the Middle Ages era. And it's a fantasy revenge. And the way that I'm thinking about it is it's a very simple story and a very simple film in terms of the narrative. But with Crabs was very complicated. There was a lot of actors, and there was a lot of special effects, and there was a lot of like weird, science story mixed with animal monsters story, and there was just a lot going on. Too many romances, and I mean, it was a lot to juggle that level of complexity. And so with Ty, the way I'm picturing it and I'm writing it is to have it be a very straightforward narrative, so that I can focus on making it the best version of that narrative that I possibly can. And so I'm going to be really focusing on directing the action, lots of planning, the getting all of the beats to be as clean as I possibly can, so that the story, like John Wick is a really good analogy for this film, because within the first 15 minutes, you understand what his goal is, and you are sympathetic to him from the very beginning all the way to the end. And it's a very simple desire that he has. And so Tithe is a similar film.
Thank you, Pierce. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I will send you, if you want, the translation of this interview in French and English.
That'd be great.
Okay. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You as well. Take care. Thanks so much, Morris.